Hi everyone, this is Kushla and I'm back for another channeled session where I tune into a particular topic that I've chosen ahead of time, and I channel information from the universal realm so that we can all learn and grow from what we hear by us thinking new thoughts about the things that we've been through in our past, so that a type of evolution happens on a level of consciousness where we come to be more present day in our thoughts and our awarenesses and in our expressions of self. So this topic came to me a while ago now. It's been several weeks that I've had it written down and in the back of my mind that I'd really like to tune into this topic. However, a bit of a roller coaster came around where I was kind of destabilized emotionally. I've had a lot of grief come up, kind of like a lot of old symptoms that I thought that I'd worked through resurfacing, and it was pretty convincing at making me believe that I'd somehow gone backwards, or that I was existing in a time of a few years ago where things were much harder for me. I was struggling emotionally, mentally, and wanting to shut myself away from the world. That's the short version of what I was going through. So I've kind of been sitting in those energies for about 3 weeks now, and it's made everything pretty impossible, whilst also there's been like scatterings of hope throughout that time where I was kind of existing in two worlds at once, where the illusion of past was domineering over me, while I was also presently aware of who I've become more recently as a result of me expressing myself through these recordings, learning new information, healing myself, doing clearings, those kinds of things. So the topic that I wrote down and that came to me intuitively and that I was guided towards is called Silencing the Inner Critic. It's something that I have struggled with a lot, probably for the last 8 years, consistently, since I closed down my business full-time. But realistically, I've been having a really hard time for about 10 years. And I would say that my inner critic, I'm being made aware of, if you were to imagine, you're in some kind of game doing martial arts or whatever, and your ultimate opponent is actually yourself. That's what just came to me in this moment. The force of power that I'm up against is equal to who I am as a whole. So this kind of impenetrable force and this ultimate being that is against me and is my opponent in life, it's like looking in the mirror. So anything I could do or think or be, they're already one step ahead, or they can oppose me in a certain way, because it's actually just a reflection of me and my traumatic moments, I guess. Another thing that I want to mention ahead of time is this weird vision that I've been seeing, probably for about as long as I've had the title of this recording. And the only way I can describe it is if I say that it's like I'm in the audience looking at two people standing in front of me. There's a row of victims, and I'm one of them. And I'm looking at these two people that are facing my direction, and as a force that's going against me. And what I see is an ex-partner of mine, and I'm standing beside him. So part of the information that I got was not only do I associate with being one of his victims, but one of my major problems is that I see myself standing next to him as if I am responsible for what he did. I am to blame. I am the same as him. I am, and I mean, when I see that vision, I'm standing there lifeless, and I'm completely incapacitated, and it's not like I'm standing there strong and, ready to attack kind of thing. I'm literally like a mute, and he's standing beside me. So no matter which way I view it, you know, I am both the victim, but I'm in some weird warped way, I am responsible for what happens or what happened, and I'm responsible for what he did to me. And so, yeah, it was this weird little vision that came about, and I inquired about it, and I found it quite intriguing and puzzling, and I wondered why I was seeing it, and I feel like it's relevant to today's information. And I was told that it's a type of disassociation technique where a person identifies as the harmful individual, as a type of coping mechanism, or as a type of response to danger and threats, violence, abuse, you know, belittling, name-calling, derogatory tones of voice, etc. It's some type of response that the body and the mind goes through that is obviously like deformed and abnormal. And it's like my intuition was trying to tell me what it is that I'm up against. So I want to now switch to just talking specifically about the topic, and I'm now just going to channel the message, even though everything that I just said was channeled as well. I am going to tune into silencing the inner critic. So this topic came about due to a need for people to learn about the debilitating effects that can come about when a person goes through threats to their mind and their physical being, or some kind of abusive scenario, or if they go through some kind of alarming event that makes them kind of jump out of their skin and exist above themselves in a deluded state of disconnection from their awarenesses. It can come about through intimidation and threat and feeling like your life is in danger. And should these kinds of experiences happen multiple times or over a long period of time, or say a person grows up in an environment where threat is around them all the time, whether that's through an overbearing, controlling, aggressive, angry or volatile parent or person in the home, etc. It comes to shape a person's identity in a way where they suppress their will to be powerful and assertive and knowing of who they are, and they squash themselves down into like a tiny little box inside themselves, and they refuse to be all of their expressive qualities of self until the danger is over with, or until they move away from that threat or individual that has caused them to feel that way. However, some people never really free themselves from that kind of trauma because it lives on inside of them, even when, say, the threatening individual is no longer in their life or in their orbit or even in the living realm. They could have come to no longer exist in some way. However, if that person has layers of traumatic response energy in their physical being, and if they have layers of emotional wounds and layers of unprocessed trauma energy that's sitting in their subconscious and kind of like stuffed into pockets around their physical body, then it's possible that this individual will come to have a kind of voice within themselves that is toxic for them to be aware of. This kind of trauma where multiple awarenesses are speaking to them from inside of their body, almost like a stench being given off by waste material. Or like I'm seeing almost like, if you imagine like cow dung, and it just sits there and it just festers and the smell comes off of it. That's almost like what trauma energy can look like when it's layered and it's clumped together in a heap, and it can give off a stench inside of that person that then triggers their mind and their awarenesses, and they come to exist in a state of non-reality where they are themselves in the moment. However, they are also existing in a past tense state at the same time, simply because this energy inside of them, this stench, this stink of the past, is interacting with their brain and kind of pushing all their buttons, and it's making them subconsciously aware of the person that they used to be in a time of traumatic events going on. So this button pushing and this triggering of the awarenesses is something that can cause a person to live outside of themselves on a level of their soul, because they never really feel safe to exist in their physical form, and they can then kind of drift through life never really integrating their experiences properly, never really manifesting the life that they dream of, because it takes a person existing in their allness on a level of the soul spirit self and the car of the physical being, and all of the energetic components of self and chi existing within and around that individual, in order for them to communicate effectively with the earth and the nature realm, which helps them to bring good life experiences towards them, and it helps them to manifest their dreams. So when a person has only one foot in the door, so to speak, or they have, they're tippy-toeing when it comes to existing inside of their physical form, because some kind of shock or awareness is keeping them above themselves, in an elevated state where they are not existing within themselves on a physical and total kind of all-encompassing way. It can cause fight-flight symptoms to remain on and active for long periods of time, which then depletes the nervous system chi, which helps that person to remain calm and kind of more balanced in their thinking, and in a way where they assess each individual situation that they're in from a more neutral perspective. Whereas when fight flight is activated all the time, and the chi that surrounds all of the nerves and the central nervous system and all of the organs and the brain, etc., when that chi is depleted, then it's like all of the nerves are exposed to the trauma energy that exists in the body, and this can cause a lot of tension, aching, fibromyalgia type symptoms, lots of mystery symptoms to flare up, because that individual is no longer defending themselves and protecting their chi within their physical form, because trauma is making them associate with a past version of themselves where they were a completely powerless individual. So this type of dissociative response is one that I have been existing in for a long time now, because of certain awarenesses coming to me at a past period where I had kind of flashbacks during meditation and healing, where I was being guided by another person. I saw things from my past that didn't make any sense to me at the time. However, I do clearly remember a shock going through my body that made me kind of curl up in a ball on the chair that I was in. I then started having more flashbacks and awarenesses coming to me when I was doing daily activities, where I could clearly see a person standing over me from my past. And I went into a state of traumatic response that is hard to articulate, because it didn't make any sense to me at the time, and I only knew myself to have been in one abusive relationship at that time, whereas there was actually 3, and this particular one that was coming up for my attention because of the visions that I'd seen, I was completely unaware of at the time. So without me going too much into that, I will say that the stench of my past was so putrid and so all-encompassing that I retreated inside of myself, shriveled up on a level of expression. So if you imagine like your soul being this amazing, expansive energy form, mine was like a little speck of dust. It completely shrank down. It became non-existent to my mind and my awarenesses. Like I couldn't even see myself. And I've remained in this state ever since, struggling with identity issues, struggling with being myself, being assertive, communicating effectively, running away from people, being standoffish, not being able to have fun and be playful and be as social and engaging as I would wish myself to be. This, of course, then caused me to close down my business, run into hiding, where I spent many years not talking to anyone at all. That was consecutively for a 3-year period, and then COVID happened, and that's when I kind of learnt the truth of all of my past stuff, and that brought me to this now moment where I'm being encouraged to be more of myself and talk more, express more, and try my hardest to communicate with people, which is partly why I started up this YouTube channel to begin with, to try and get me used to expressing what I feel, what I want to say, what's coming through to me in the moment, because I've existed in a past state for so long where I don't say anything and I stand down and I silence myself and I shut up and I don't do anything at all. This, of course, has crippled me and made me unabundant in a multitude of different ways, where I find it very hard to engage in life in general. And all I want to do is get back to being normal again and being me and running my business and making people happy and sharing my love of healing and meditation and etc. But for every moment that I feel like I want to put my foot on the accelerator and let's get going, there is this impenetrable force that is against me, going in the opposite direction, that will not let me take one step in any direction. And that's partly why I wanted to channel this information today, which is called Silencing the Inner Critic, because mine is on loudspeaker 24/7. It domineers over me and cajoles me into believing myself to be someone completely alien to me, completely foreign, this unknown individual that I don't know myself to be. However, I became this person many years ago now in certain relationships that I was in, where I disassociated and became unaware of my surroundings and what was going on, which is why so much of what I went through was hidden behind a veil of illusion. So silencing the inner critic means coming to an awareness inside yourself of recognizing that trauma is to blame for the voices inside that you hear that tell you, no, you can't, stop, don't do that, you're a failure, you won't succeed, etc., etc. And while this sounds simple and like something someone else may have said before, it's more than just trauma energy. It's layers upon layers of the same thoughts about self, the same kinds of unforgiveness, where you believe yourself to have put yourself in a situation where bad things then happen to you. In my case, I was convinced that I had somehow been stupid enough, or like kind of guided myself towards certain individuals who all did the same thing, and who all spoke the same way, and who all treated me in the same ways. This came about as a result of the name calling, the berating, the wearing down my psychology to a point where I literally believed everything that I was being told, even if those things did not match or align to my morals or who I believed myself to be in a conscious state. These people resculpted my beliefs and my self-view, as well as how I view the world around me and how safe I am and what I'm capable of as a human being, through violent acts, abuse, verbal abuse, and blaming everything on me all the time. And over the years that went by, I became convinced that I was a completely different person than who I really am. And this allowed me to, and this then caused me to invite more people like them towards me. I became friends with people like them. I allowed people to, spend time in my presence who were of the same kind of level or vibration as them, because I unknowingly was in such a low place inside of myself that I didn't see that there was something wrong with what was going on because of those identity issues. And this relates to that vision that I saw where I'm standing next to these harmful individuals, instead of being free of that kind of imagery or seeing myself as one and the same as all of the other people that they've harmed. This vision came about due to self-punishing behaviors initiating themselves because of the derogatory tones that I was spoken to in, and the words that were used, and the vile language, etc. And I want to say the having no self-pity, and seeing like them kind of laughing in the face of me being in a paralyzed state, or where I can't defend myself, or like I'm in a fragile state, and that being laughed at and mocked and that kind of thing. And this layering of experiences that I had since I was 18 years old then sculpted my view of the world around me and who I am as an innate being within my body, in a way where I took on their view of who I was as truth, and kind of like dissolved, minimized, suppressed my own view of who I was. I've always been a confident individual, someone who's sparkly and bright and talkative, loves to play around and have a joke, and very social, love people, loads of friends, very bubbly and friendly. And instead I became this other version of self when I was around these individuals in private moments. And then when all of this trauma energy came up about 10 years ago now, I then began identifying as the suppressed trauma instead of the part of me that I was suppressing unknowingly, which is the truth of who I really am, when all of my moments of life are included in that mix of energy. I became the words that they said to me. I became the derogatory things that they convinced me of. and it made me sink inside of myself and become someone completely foreign to me. And I have tried everything to change my perspective and to figure out what the hell was going on. Why do I feel so low? Why can't I snap myself out of this? Because I know who I've been my whole life. I know things consciously that I've been through, and I got through it, and I came out the other side, and I decided to be a powerful person anyway, you know. And I've been through many low moments and then dug myself out of the headspace that I was in and found a way to empower myself to get back on my feet and keep going. This time, however, it has been almost impossible. As I said, that opposing force that was that I could not move past, that imaginary opponent, you know, in the martial arts game. It's almost like, you know, you're up against Mortal Kombat kind of thing. And you're up against this opponent, but I was matched by someone that I could not beat because she knew everything about me. She knew all of my weaknesses and flaws, all of my strengths, and she could match me at that same level. So there was no way that I could beat her. And that's exactly how it's felt. Like I've been searching and longing and looking and trying and, you know, like doing so much self-growth work. And it's taken me all this time to get to a point of figuring out who that opponent was and why she's standing in front of me and why I see myself in such an abnormal way where I'm just as bad as this toxic individual from my past who has many faces, not just one, because of me having dated multiple individuals with similar characteristics. And today I wrote the intro for YouTube before actually channeling this information, just so that I could kind of get an awareness of what it was that I was going to tap into in this recording. And I was fascinated to see, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is the thing that's going to set me free, because it all kind of just tied together and made sense of all of those things that I needed to know about myself and what I was dealing with, so that I can finally put it to rest and move on. Because that's what I've always done in the past, but this time it seemed impossible. I couldn't figure out, why haven't I gotten over this? Why haven't I moved on? I know this, I've done this. You know, I've spent so much time going into my trauma and my past. Why is it that I still haven't changed? Why aren't I feeling better? Why am I still feeling low? Why can't I still leave my house? Why can't I have friends? Why can't I talk to people? Why can't I pick up the phone and speak to someone? Why am I still hiding myself away? And I just felt like when I wrote the intro for this recording that I was like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. So the mind can become traumatized in a particular way where it disassociates outwards in order to avoid an impact coming to the mind's consciousness field, which contains all of like the memories and the awarenesses of self of a particular kind. And when some kind of traumatic event is going on, the I am of the mind expresses itself outwards into this field of energy. And it's possible for that person to then kind of pollute the consciousness field of the mind with whatever harmful experience they're going through. So the mind will kick its consciousness field like a spherical mass of thought. It will kick it away from itself, out of the way, so that it can go through whatever event is going on, and that energy doesn't pollute the consciousness field of the mind, so that when that person comes back into, you know, a more logical state, the danger is over with or whatever, they can think good thoughts, rational thoughts, thoughts of an encouraging kind that help them to move on from what they experienced. So if it was a shock, for example, they'll think thoughts that help to calm them down and to assure them that that experience is over with, and then eventually they'll move themselves towards thinking in a different way, where that time is just in the past and they no longer feel under threat or something of the sort. However, a person can disassociate outwards, and if multiple experiences happen one after the other, or if that person continues to be in a threatening or harmful environment, such as, abusive scenarios or homes where violence is going on, or threats, or ridicule, etc., then the mind can only disassociate out a small portion, or then come to not disassociate properly anymore. And that off-center behavior of the field of the mind can then stay in a warped and abnormal state, where it's no longer sitting around the central point of the mind, it's off to the side. And then it kind of grows to stay this way and adapt to being both thoughtful in the now as well as not at the same time. So in order for a person to exist in the current moment in time, this field of energy needs to sit around the central point of the mind. And when disassociations happen, this field of energy can move backwards, off center, it can move to the left or the right, it can go towards the front of the brain, more towards the forehead, which causes like pressures and headaches in that zone. And when it's off center in this way, it can adapt to thinking that it's okay, that it's centrally aware, or that it's somehow normal for it to be existing in this space, when in actual fact it's off center, it's out of alignment with the now that exists in that person's mind. And this can cause a lot of problems when it comes to that person associating themselves as the soul spirit self incarnate in the physical form. This, of course, then creates a lot of issues for that person when it comes to willing themselves into new experiences, or them kind of guiding themselves towards a better time of life, etc., because the will is what powers the functionality of the brain and all of the physical mass in a particular way, where it says, let's do this, and that person then walks towards a new experience that is better and free from the things that they just went through. However, when the will is compromised due to disassociation playing a role in what is going on, that person can then struggle with the body working against them to a certain degree, where it is unwilling to take any steps in any direction until that mass of trauma energy has been dealt with and exited from the physical form in a way where it no longer comes to express its signatures or that stench and negatively affect the mind. So when disassociation is playing a role in that person's behavior, it can cause them to not be willful on a physical level. And I'm seeing a vision of something I've read about in a book about trauma, where it's like the head goes one way and the body goes another, like there's like a severing of the head, which is something that I definitely was very aware of about 8 years ago, where my mind and my head was like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Let's go. Like I'm ready to, start up my business. I'm ready to try. I'm ready to do this. But it was like everything else inside of me was like, hell no. And so there's a reference to that disconnection of the mind from the physical body, from the thoughts of now and the thoughts of the physical form and what it has experienced in the past on a level of trauma, and a need for both things to communicate as one in order for that person to be able to assert themselves and move into a new life experience. This comes about due to the mind never returning to its central point of expression, where it is enveloping the I am of the mind and the field of consciousness of the mind expressing itself outwardly into the head, and then those thoughts communicating down into the physical form to alert it to any kinds of changes that have taken place on a level of that person's thoughts of now and belief in self, and them clearly seeing that, you know, the danger is over with, life has changed, I'm feeling better now, I'm ready to experience something different. And instead, all of the traumatic experience that that person has been through is blocking the pathways of thought down into the body, because of a mass existing in the chest and in the heart zone, sometimes up into the throat, which is what I'm seeing for me personally right now, which is why I'm kind of zipping in and out of being presently aware and being able to concentrate. And I can see this energy goes all the way up into my throat, which is affecting my voice and my channeling ability. And that's why I'm seeing this vision, to make me aware of it, so that I push it down and stop listening to it over and above my own intuitive thoughts right now. And when the chest area of heart, thymus, diaphragm, etc. is full of traumatic waste, it can destabilize the heart and its ability to listen to the thoughts of the mind, as well as it also acting as a bit of a blockade when it comes to the mind communicating all the way down to the base of the body area of lower body, which then causes a massive backlog of toxic energy in the body, because that person can no longer release properly. So the mind needs to be able to flow its thoughts down into the physical form in order for a kind of awareness change to happen in all of the central being and the lower being, so that as those thoughts then move down into the ground beneath the body, that person changes out of one kind of thought process into another that is new and neutral and now based, and the current moment in time, instead of them constantly being aware of themselves as a past version of who they were in a moment of shock, for example. Meaning that traumatic energies can build up in the body, and that stench can be given off, and it can trick the mind into believing that a past time of life is happening again, or that that person can't be sure of the moment that they're in because something bad is actually happening, because that stench or that energy that's being given off by I nearly said the turd, that cow patty of trauma, is, you know, kind of swamping and suffocating the mind and the awarenesses and all of the sensory elements, and it's convincing the head and all of its components of life material and chi that this past experience has not been dealt with, it has not been moved on from, and it is somehow still happening simply because the toxic energies of those past times of life are still resonating in the body. What needs to happen is for the mind to be aware that this energy can be dealt with, it can be concluded, it can be finalized in its expressions of look at me, help me, I need you to know what I represent, simply by that person acknowledging who they are in their present moment. And this may take a little bit of concentrating on who they are with all of their will intact, in a way where they clearly see all of the steps that they've taken since a past period of grief, for example, that's brought them to their now moment where things are obviously different. Meaning that this person could write a list down of the ways in which they've changed, the obvious things that are different, such as them, being in a new relationship, being in a completely different country, no longer being friends with certain people, having brand new people who are wonderful and caring, etc., that weren't in their life at the time when something negative was going on. There's fundamental key changes that person can recognize if they take the time to do so. And as I said, you could write a list. If you think of, maybe if you look to a particular time that was difficult for you, and write, I'm seeing like a page of information about what was going on, what kind of person you were, the kinds of things that you did for your activities, your home life. Did you have children? Did you not? Were you married? Were you not? Were you in a relationship? Were you not? Like your social life. Were you out partying all the time? Etc., etc. And then, bring yourself into the now with another piece of paper where you jot down, what kinds of things are different. Your relationship status, your friendship circle, what do you do for work, if it's significantly different. Where you live, what kinds of environments you're in, all of those fundamental changes, like you no longer go out partying, you no longer enjoy the same things. That's very relevant for me. Like I don't drink alcohol. I haven't done for over 7 years now. And that's something that I'm being prompted, like, remember that, like, I'm married, I've got kids, I live in a different country. There's key things that I could write down and go, this is who I am now, as opposed to that other piece of paper where a totally different person exists when I think back to who I was in my younger years. And I'm also being prompted that because there was 3 different abusive relationships that I was in, I should do 3 pieces of paper. So like the first one that happened when I was 18, then the second one, and then the third one, and then do the piece of paper for right now, where I can jot down all of the things that are fundamentally unique and different. Like I never used to channel like this at any other time in my life. I didn't have my sacred geometry creations. I hadn't taught all over Australia. Like there's key things that I could write on that list, that piece of paper about my now, to affirm to myself and my mind and my body, that I do not exist in those previous times of life that are all kind of sandwiched together and stuck and held in a state of suppression, whilst giving off that yucky stench that's telling me that I'm that version that exists on 3 bits of paper instead of the 1 bit of paper that represents my now. I'm saying this so that other people who have identity issues, problems with self-worth, problems with, getting going again after being stuck, and your life being on hold, and you being in some kind of state where you find it really difficult to be the person that you know that you want to be, in whatever capacity that looks like for you. For me, it was all-encompassing. And this is a very simple technique that can be used, so I highly recommend doing it for anyone who has issues with that inner critic talking to them. I want you to remember that it's like I know I keep using this reference, but this is what I keep seeing. It's like a turd. It's a cow patty giving off a stench. Like, would you engage with that? Would you knowingly carry this cow patty around with you everywhere you went and refer to it every time you thought about doing something? Should I do this? Should I do that? Oh, I'll just ask this cow patty. This is my sense of humor coming through, and this is that confident, cheeky personality of mine. This is how I used to be all the time, but this is how my intuition speaks to me. It makes me laugh. It's cheeky because that's who I actually am inside. So it's kind of like I'm being told, you know, something quite amusing, which is like I'm literally imagining myself holding a patty in my hand that's giving off this stench. It's got flies around it, as if it's like a person, as if it's like a guidance, like, oh, my guru, let me refer to you when asking, should I do this? Oh, no, you should not. You know, oh, should I be powerful? No, oh, no. You should stay scared. You should be paranoid. You should lock yourself away and hide yourself from the world. That's what you should do. Oh, okay, thanks, cow patty. Yep, no worries. I'll listen to you. Like, who in their right mind would do that? You just wouldn't. So it's like I'm being told to tell people to refer to it, like, think of it in this amusing way, like, and the more that you recognize that that's what this is like, it's going to make changes inside of your mind and in your brain and in your awarenesses of, yeah, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to listen to something toxic from my past. I don't want to listen to that piece of crap that I dated all those years ago. Ooh, that was an interesting one. Because I know that I'm a very strong-willed individual, and I wouldn't do that. Hell no, I wouldn't listen to that person over the person that I am today, you know. I wouldn't listen to my old traumas and wounds. I wouldn't listen to that person that I saw in that vision who's just standing there weak and has had the life sucked out of them, and who is completely willless and silent and voiceless and traumatized and unable to move from the spot that they're standing in because they haven't been given the command to do so. You know, they haven't been told that they're allowed to by this person who controls their every move. And I hope that by me talking about these things in the way that I am, like the very simple vision of, you know, like this pile of steaming crap, and how that is what this past and this trauma layering represents, and how it can talk to you, and how it can convince you of things that belong in a past time of life. They belong with an old version of yourself that is no longer who you are in this current day. And if you can't believe that you have evolved yourself from your past because of the types of traumas that you went through, you just need to know that the human mind is evolving itself on a moment-to-moment basis in split seconds of time, because old thoughts are constantly being taken over by new thoughts. So if you imagine this constant flow of information coming in, like from the front of your head through you and then passing out the back, you know, your thoughts are constantly evolving. You're always thinking new thoughts. Therefore, you're always changing on a level of thought. You're always changing the consciousness of your mind and of your physical being. So therefore, it only makes sense that if you think about all of the moments in time that have ever taken place since the time of you being in some kind of threatening or abusive situation, or in some kind of toxic scenario, some kind of paralyzing event, some kind of experience that you had where threats were around you, or you thought that you might not survive, even if that moment was yesterday, even if it was a week ago, or in my case many years ago, you can think about how many moments, how many seconds have passed by since the time that something bad happened to you or around you, and you can actually convince yourself that, hang on a second, I must have evolved, because look at all of those seconds that passed by, all of those minutes, all of those hours, the days, And in each of those moments, I thought new thoughts. So it means that the ones that I thought of in a moment of something shocking me or scarring me or wounding me or making me feel under threat, I have thought so many thoughts since that time that they must exist behind me somewhere far away, because all of the thoughts that I've thought of since that moment have taken its place. So this is a kind of visualization that you can have. And as I said, the writing things down on a bit of paper, so it's almost like I'm seeing like a timeline. If you were to kind of map out your life, imagine you're writing an autobiography. I hope that's the right one, biography, autobiography, where you are wanting to tell people who you are and about your life. You would start with your first bit of paper, which is kind of like, your birth and your younger years, and you kind of map out bits of paper that would then create this timeline up until the present moment. And then on each bit of paper, you're jotting down notes of the key topics and things that you want to talk about to share your life with other people. This is kind of using a similar method, but what it's doing is helping you to have like a visual representation of the evolution that you have been through with the bits of paper. And so in my case, I need to start at the age of 18 and do that relationship that went on for a couple of years. Then I need to go to my 20s and write those kind of things that were different, and the kind of person that I was and how I was expressing myself in my 20s. Then there was another one in my 20s, and then I need to talk about right now. So in my personal scenario, 3 bits of paper to represent those 3 times of past that I need to free myself from emotionally, mentally, and on a level of trauma. And then I need to anchor myself in the truth of my now, in the present day, which is the list that's going to say who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm at, where do I live, what house am I in. My address is different. The type of house that I live in is different. The environment of my home is completely unique to anywhere that I've ever lived before. I've never lived in this suburb before. There are key fundamental things. I haven't worked for like 8 years. That's never happened in my life. I started working at 14, love being independent. However, I couldn't do that. I don't even have a car. There's key fundamental things about my right now that can help me to pull my mind back into its centralized point and recognize, this is the day that I exist in. This is the person that I am. This is the truth of my now. And in doing that, I can then grab all of the different facets of who I am and all of my energy, and I can bring myself out of that disassociated state, and I can anchor myself in my being, in my physicality, and I can start living my life again. I can start actually engaging with the world around me in a way where I'm grounded in my truth, and I'm anchoring down into the earth who I am now, so that all of the nature realm can then adapt and go, okay, she's gotten over that trauma. Okay, she's not existing in that other time of life. She's actually in 2025. Okay, cool. Let's bring in energies to support who she is today, because I thought she was that other person that she's been expressing herself as. I thought she was that mound of crap that was giving off that stench, because that's what she's been putting out into the world all this time. Because of her confusion. Okay, no, she's actually a female. Okay, she's actually a good person. Actually, she's got these things going for her that she should be expressing that out into the world around her, instead of that stench and that pollutive energy that repels people and makes people, not want to spend time with her, etc. So by me clearly defining who I am in the now, I help to free myself from that toxic voice of the inner critic, and which is actually the voice of trauma. Let's rename it the voice of trauma, because that's actually what it is. It's the voice of past self. It's the voice of past experiences, past life, and it does not belong in the now. And the sooner that we can kind of identify with the reality of who we've become as a result of all of those tough times that we've worked through, suddenly we're going to feel a lot better about ourselves, and suddenly we're going to assert ourselves differently, and suddenly we're out there engaging with the world around us in a completely different way, where, you know what, I will allow people to get to know me again. I will allow myself to have friends. I will allow myself to go out in public and engage in the reality that exists around me. And who knows, maybe I'll even challenge myself to do a little bit more of what it is that I've been yearning to do for many years now. So I'm going to start to conclude this session where I talked about silencing the inner critic. And I want people to know that it is possible with the power of your mind and your thoughts to bring yourself back to a point of now where you no longer see the steaming pile of poo, you no longer hear it, you no longer sense it, you no longer give it your attention. In fact, mine's been shrinking as I've been talking about it. It's funny that I've seen, this big cow patty, and each time that I refer to it and I kind of bring my awareness to it, it's getting smaller and smaller, which is amazing, which is probably why my more cheeky personality has started coming out, why I've been expressing myself a little differently in the recording, because that festering mound of grossness has been getting smaller and smaller simply by me hearing the exact same words that I'm saying to you. So just know that as you're hearing this information, as simple as it may seem, it is changing something inside of you in a way where you can identify with, that's interesting, didn't know that, or yep, that's amazing, yeah, I can totally resonate with what she said. And all it takes is you adapting to new thoughts, and then that evolution kicks in where you let go of old ones, and then suddenly your consciousness field of mind is elevated to a higher vibration simply because you've kicked out what you believed before by you thinking new thoughts, which then created new beliefs about self, which then purged all of the old and toxic belief energy that you once held within that field of mind at a time of trauma. So I want you to know that I greatly appreciate you listening to my recordings. I love it when you comment and give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate anyone who reaches out to me and says that they've enjoyed what they've heard. And just know that this really encourages me to keep going and keep sharing. I haven't done one of these recordings for a little while now. As I mentioned, I've been going through a bit of a hard time, but I'm definitely feeling more energized right now after talking about this topic. I'm feeling more hopeful about the future, and I'm feeling more determined to keep going and keep being me, and I look forward to what comes on the other side of me believing in myself again. So I want to thank you all for joining me today at Channeling with Kush. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you appreciate this post. Share it with anyone you think that may enjoy listening to it or needs to hear this content. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more content like this, because there's a lot more to come. Thanks everyone. Take care. I'll see you all again next time.